Hello there, men, and welcome to the Masculinism Movement channel, a place for men to be men and talk about masculinity and men's issues. I'm your host, Brian Crawl, and today I'm going to be mansplaining to you about how society is turning men into women. This may not come as news to you, but testosterone levels have been on a steady decline for generations now. And I know you're all familiar with the trans movement and some of the more overt and sexual ways that certain countercultures like the LGBTQ community and feminism in general are feminizing men, going as far as to put drag shows in schools and all that insanity. But I want to talk about some of the less obvious, yet even more mainstream ways in which society is feminizing men and turning them into women. When I first started this channel, I did a video on some of the common ways that men get emasculated in everyday life, and that's like a preliminary to this video, so make sure you've seen that, linked below. Now, I'm doing all of this in support of men, and sometimes in order to support someone, we have to talk about what they are doing wrong. In fact, that's what one of the next videos is about. And today, I'm going to be talking about some things that may be hard for some of you to hear, but as always, they need to be said. And I'm doing this in support of masculinity. The first thing I want to talk about that is turning men into more feminine-like creatures, psychologically speaking, is social media and text messaging. Social media has conditioned men with this sort of feminine brand of narcissism that causes them to act more like women. And I'm not just talking about the woke and the mentally ill guys on TikTok and all that. I'm talking about the narcissistic pretty boys who use Instagram the same way that these fucking thoughts do. And all these wannabe Instagram models, the types of women we complain about in the MGTOW community. And I'm talking about the shamelessly superficial and vapid guys who act like social butterfly versions of NPCs, or worse, catty, bitchy little trolls. And either way, they fit into the same narcissistic, sociopathic, wannabe socialite mold that we complain about in women. But perhaps the worst of all are the men who are actually successful and or good looking and use social media to broadcast these things to the world like a fucking insecure, spoiled little princess. Does anyone actually think that kind of insecure, feminine narcissism looks good on a man? I mean, I can't believe that some of these men are actually really successful on either social media or in real life, because they seem to be such fake fucking douchebags who, again, are acting like narcissists. This especially goes for those macho bros who are trying to make themselves seem all alpha and are really just representing a negative male stereotype. But the worst of the worst has got to be the guys who are into fitness. I'm into fitness, and you'd only see me post progress photos 1 to 2 times per year because you won't really notice any observable changes if you were to take pictures more frequently. It takes a lot of time for more muscle to keep showing up, especially when you've been doing it for a while. But these guys who are trying to be these fitness influencers online by posting this try-hard bullshit, taking pictures of themselves multiple times a day and trying to get validated for every fucking exercise they do. And, every fucking muscle that they have every fucking day is just a real shame. And it is super fucking feminine to be so narcissistic. And this is why I cannot be in the fitness industry, because I cannot stand these motherfuckers and to see what has become of masculinity. And you have to admit that men being overly focused on their appearance and attractiveness is not only narcissistic, but feminine. And that's why they end up looking like pretty boys, not, the types of traditionally masculine, sort of rough around the edges look that men traditionally had in America, like the Marlboro Man types. They aren't the only ones, though. These narcissistic trends on social media all seem quite feminine to me, psychologically speaking. There's this sense of deep insecurity in people on there and this neediness for validation like you'd expect of a younger female. And posting pictures of yourself multiple times a day, like whenever you can make an excuse to take a picture of yourself, like you're just constantly looking for excuses to post pictures and begging others to look at you and like you and give you attention. I mean, come on, guys. You are acting like a little fucking bitch. Be a fucking man. And social media in general to me seems like a feminine type of social scene that is very reminiscent of high school in its maturity level. So it just doesn't seem very becoming of a mature adult man, especially as you get older. Like back when I was younger and I was a P-way and a nightclub promoter, then it was more appropriate for me to be on social media, especially because I had to be promoting my nightclub events. But, these days, I felt like I just had to grow up and like I had outgrown that social scene, which is just very immature and feminine, and people on there act like a bunch of teenage fucking girls. And then another thing that seems very feminine to me these days is the way men have begun to talk due to the fact that they are doing most of their talking via text with their cell phones. And this has caused the quality and intelligence level and overall length of their communication and language usage to be diminished and minimized, causing men to talk again like teenage girls. This has not only affected them via text message, but it has reprogrammed the language processing center of the prefrontal cortex, retarding it and causing it to become more feminine, like that of a teenage girl. When grown men text me sounding like that, they are fucking done in my eyes. There's just no communicating with someone who talks like an immature girl, especially since a lot of them are quick to get bitchy or catty and manipulative, displaying behaviors I talk about when calling out toxic femininity in women. It's like these guys just can't think and talk like mature adult men anymore. It's fucking pitiful. This is one of the reasons men should just give up texting and social media altogether. And getting rid of the cell phone altogether would be an even better idea. And that's what I've done. Except for listening to my podcast, I don't use cell phones anymore. And another way that cell phones may be part of the problem is that they're emitting radio waves. And when you have it in your pocket next to your balls, that's probably why your testosterone is getting lowered, because you're basically castrating yourself with radiation. But that's not the only reason. Another is probably your shitty diet, full of fatty, sugary, artificial processed foods. Eating processed foods with synthetic or artificial chemicals is fucking up your hormones. And too much fat increases estrogen and makes you feminine, fat, weak, and lethargic, like a big fucking bitch. And too much sugar causes diabetes too. So this is why I make about 100% of my food from scratch. As an athlete, I can't have anything fucking up my hormones giving me bitch tits. And I also need to have my nutrition on point if I want to be growing muscle as fast as possible. And over the course of my life, I've watched just about everyone get fattened up in this society, like a bunch of fucking livestock. The average male is becoming a fat, weak, feminine little baby due to his greasy, disgusting diet. And honestly, as a cook, most of what people eat is fucking pathetic, disgusting crap to me. Like, honestly, get some fucking standards. What are you, a fucking dog? It's even called junk food because everyone knows that it is like eating trash, and yet they do it anyway, all day, every day. I can't fucking understand it. How about growing the fuck up and making yourself some real goddamn food before you kill yourself like a big fat fucking baby? Don't even get me started on how stupid I think people are when it comes to eating. And it's eating. One of the most basic things. Like, how the fuck can you be so bad at it? All it takes, really, even if you don't want to cook, is just like picking the right shit. And distinguishing good food from bad food isn't that complicated. But moving on. Let's talk about one of the political issues and what feminists call the systemic ways that men are being turned into women. It all started with the sexual revolution. What happened then is that the family structure changed from a patriarchal nuclear family model to a matrilineal non-nuclear family, with female familiar power and dominance, and men becoming more like house husbands, or even in more cases being estranged baby daddies. And in either of these instances, the father has less influence and even less presence in the child's life and development. This is incredibly emasculating to men and the male gender in general, to have its male role models and influences taken away from it. I don't really even think I have to explain that to you. And one aspect of that emasculation is the rise of these female players and the supplicating simps and white knights and other types of male pussies and manginas, that we talk about by various names, who basically let themselves get controlled and pushed around by women like a bunch of fucking slaves, just for a taste of attention from her here and there. It is some really seriously weak, pathetic bitch shit to see what a disease simping has actually become. And some of these guys in the manosphere call these men beta males, but that's not even what they are, alright? Beta males are actually high up on the social hierarchy. These guys are much lower than that and deserve to be called what they are, little fucking bitches. And I'm sorry to have to say that, because when I first started this channel, I said I was going to make it a supportive atmosphere for all men, and that there wasn't going to be any simp shaming. But honestly, it's gotten to the point where I need to speak out against it. So I'll be doing a whole video on the epidemic of simping sometime in the future. Wait a minute. Now a word from our sponsor, me. Do you value the ability to use words to do things such as compose meaningful sentences and speak the truth? Did you know that here in this great country of America, you have the right to free speech? And so do I. And if you don't support people who are exercising that right, then you are probably a fascist dictator. Just like the YouTube algorithm, which stifles the content of patriotic people like me who dare to speak out against the gynocentric, matriarchal, feminist regime that has been aggressively taking over our country. And if YouTube isn't going to promote my content and is going to suppress it instead, I can only rely upon you, my viewers, to show your support. If you don't support free speech, we will stop having it. Which is exactly what is already happening, with YouTube videos that censor themselves getting promoted and explicit ones like mine getting shadow banned. So, if you like listening to me use my free speech, make sure to press like and share and donate whatever you can with the PayPal link below. Don't make me work for free and get censored like a fucking communist. And with the presidential election coming up, your donations can literally be used to fund my campaign to get into the White House and abolish the matriarchy once and for all. Literally. Who would you rather have as your president? An old limp-dick liberal leftist cuck with noodly arms who's probably never been in a real fight in his life? Or a good old-fashioned, misogynistic, patriarchal man's man like me, with balls big enough to stand up to women, and who you can count on to speak out against them and tell it like it is. Fight the feminazi dictatorship. Spread the message of masculinism. Keep my work alive. And now, back to our regularly scheduled content. Another emasculating and feminizing thing that has gone along with the shift to a matriarchal family structure, along with the political shift from patriarchy to matriarchy, is that violence started being heavily discouraged in men. And when you take away a man's ability to be violent and to physically fend for himself, you might as well be just chopping his fucking balls off. Men need to be taught how to be violent, ideally by their own fathers. All right, a man should be taught self-defense and martial arts, if he knows it, by his father. And I recently saw a funny scene in this movie Black Adam with Dwayne Johnson, where he is teaching this boy something about fighting or whatever, and the boy's mother goes, "I do not want you teaching my son violence." And Black Adam goes, "I understand. You want the boy's father to teach him violence." She goes, "No." And he says, "Well, then who do you want to teach him violence?" And the boy is like, "Yeah, Mom, who do you want to teach me violence?" And she says, "No one." Right? But the unfortunate fact is that the boy needs to learn violence because there are constantly wars being waged in the world, especially when there are female rulers in power. And, they're just going to be sending off all of our sons to die on the battlefield for their fucking palaces. So it's important that boys be taught violence properly by their fathers. But unfortunately, feminism and modern civilization has basically emasculated men and chopped off their fucking nutsacks by discouraging them being violent, even for the purpose of self-defense, especially if it's going to be self-defense against a woman. And it oftentimes would need to be because female violence against men has been encouraged by feminism. And it is so bad that they have actually stopped letting kids even play rough sports in school. My son tells me that he's never even played certain sports in phys ed class that were my favorites when I was a kid, like wrestling and dodgeball. And one of the so-called phys ed teachers I met recently was a morbidly obese female. She was literally one of the heaviest women I've ever met. So drag queens in the schools isn't the only way our education system is used for social engineering to turn our sons into little girls. And what do they eat in school? hormone-rich government cheese, and basically food that is a lower standard than what prison inmates get. My son says it's like eating actual garbage. It's almost like they're fattening us up on purpose, like livestock being led to the slaughter. And as if that all wasn't enough, which it is in my opinion, but just in case, feminism went on to really castrate us men like the livestock that we are when it convinced women that sexual proactiveness from men is predatory, and it started shaming men for showing any sexual interest or initiative with women that they like, which was very emasculating. But again, as if it wasn't enough, they doubled down again and started traumatizing men and ruining their lives for it, really cutting off our dicks and balls. Now, if you want to let a girl know you're interested in her sexually, you need to practically consult with a fucking lawyer first. So now men have become sexually passive like women, or even frigid like many of them. I've certainly become very icy myself, and asexual. So I'm doing this little PSA here, not because I think I'm better and haven't been affected by all this. I've felt the effects of everything. I've felt the sexual shame and emasculation. I felt the health problems from shitty American food I was fed in school, and even by my very own cunt mother, too, who was a good old-fashioned American narcissistic bitch from the 50s, who thought she knew how to be an ideal woman and raise an ideal American boy, only to castrate me in every single fucking way she could, just like all feminists, starting as soon as I was born with having an actual part of my dick cut off. Why? Probably just so it would be easier for her to clean it. I mean, they amputate part of our fucking manhood just to make it easier to clean. And somehow we don't see the red flags, even when they are doing genital mutilation to male babies. Something they decry in women but want to do to boys just to make our penises easier for them to clean for the short time we're in diapers. I mean, what does it take for us to see the tyranny? What does it take for us men to stand against such human rights violations to us? Do they have to just start giving boys vaginas at the hospital when they're born instead? Because that's probably what they're going to do next. But luckily for us, most of our feminization is psychological. And one of the most upsetting ways that they do this is when they use emotional manipulation tactics to try to get you to become more emotionally feminine. And by that I mean out of control like them, which they do by trying to get you to become emotional with them, even if it means provoking an emotional reaction in you and trying to get you to open up to them, telling you that it is safe to open up and be emotionally vulnerable with them and trying to make you feel like you can trust them. And then when you finally do share some of your feelings with them, they will use whatever emotional information they get out of you in order to exploit your emotional weaknesses and further trigger more emotional reactions, as well as in even greater manipulation plots, such as like with gaslighting campaigns, like in the movie Gaslight that I talk about in my video on gaslighting. So make sure you watch that linked below, as that sort of thing can really adversely impact your mental health. In fact, with this kind of emotional manipulation, a woman can make a man just as emotionally unstable and erratic as a female. And through gaslighting, she can literally drive you insane. And you'll feel like you're losing your fucking mind. And you will start acting like a histrionic woman just like her. Women will suck you into their social webs of lies and deceit and trickery and mind games and drive you literally so crazy that you'll want to get a therapist just to mediate your arguments. But forget about getting a therapist, because the whole field of psychotherapy these days is just another one of the systematic ways that men are being feminized psychologically. And something that I'm going to be doing an entire deep dive into with a whole series in the near future, so you can look out for that. But I just say that when it comes to female drama and histrionics, forget about winning the argument. Just get the fuck away from her and stop letting her emotionally influence you. Even and especially if this is a woman who has made you feel like you love her, because that is their greatest mind game of all, in the way that they really emotionally manipulate you. And if you let yourself fall for them, you are fucked. But even if you are like me and you don't date, even just being exposed to the modern female-dominated workplace is subjecting yourself to female influence. Unfortunately, if you work with women who are emasculating you, there may be little you could do about it besides to quit or go on strike, which might not be a bad idea. That's the last way I want to mention that women can feminize men, is through their corporate influence that we are seeing now in the woke feminist corporate culture. For as I discussed thoroughly in my video titled The Female Invasion, linked below, women have taken over the workplace and have all of the power and influence in it now. And I guess because a lot of these people who work at these businesses are NPC corporate drones, they're having some success in changing the way men behave with women through things like these mandatory sexual harassment and sensitivity trainings and other training programs that are really, again, just forms of reprogramming. So resist these forms of feminization any and every way that you can. Go your own way and try not to let the matriarchy influence you. And while I know I've used some strong words to try to get through to some of you, I'm not going to beat a dead horse or try to break any of you down more than this society already does. The point is to wake up and start resisting. Stop letting people treat you like a fucking bitch. Be a fucking man.
That concludes this video. Thanks for listening. I hope I mansplained that good enough for you. If you like what you heard, please click the like button. And if you feel you gained some value from this video and would like to give some back, please do so with the PayPal link below, because your support helps fund me doing this work and fight the good fight for men like you. If you are ready to take the red pill and wake up from the matrix and the matriarchy controlling it and learn everything you need to know about female on male sexism, get your copy of my newly released book called Misandry Exposed. On sale now for a special price that won't last long. So check it out by clicking the link below. And otherwise, take care of yourselves, men, because no woman out there is going to.